You've decided to make singing your vocation. Now what? You may be struggling to balance your life and a career in music. Are you curious about how other singers make it or how they've dealt with success and failure? Do you wonder what their biggest challenges have been, or how about what they've learned on their journey and what's important to them today? Hi, I'm Valerie Day, a singer, educator, and creative explorer. You might know me from my work with the Grammy-nominated band New Shoes. Welcome to Living a Vocal Life, where I interview singers who have succeeded in creating a life in music. You'll hear from vocalists of all genres in different stages of their careers, including singers who've been on the Billboard charts and those who are teaching the next generation. What do they have in common? They're all performers with amazing stories to tell and experiences to share. In our conversations, you'll learn what inspired them to become a singer, the kinds of challenges they've encountered, and how they've overcome them. I'll also share what I've learned on my own journey as a singer and educator, practical tools and insights that will help you to live your best, most authentic vocal life. Welcome to the first podcast interview of 2022. I hope you're doing well, and I'm so glad you're here. My guest this month is a singer and songwriter who's led an extraordinary vocal life, Tabitha Fair. Tabitha was born and raised in Oklahoma, the daughter of a preacher and a mother who ministered through music. By the time she was 5 years old, Tabitha knew she wanted to be a singer and have a career in music. And that she has, eventually garnering a record deal and becoming one of the A-list backup singers in the industry. She's recorded or sung with Sting, Cece Winans, Lady Gaga, Travis Tritt, Celine Dion, Faith Hill, Wynonna Judd, Ann Womack, Rascal Flatts, Rita Wilson, Amy Grant, Sam Moore, James Taylor, Bette Midler, Lenny Kravitz, Bruce Springsteen, John Legend, The Roots, Jennifer Hudson, Michael McDonald, Elton John, Mary J Blige, Snoop Dogg. The list goes on and on. Besides numerous recording gigs and tours, Tabitha's been a regular on the prestigious Kennedy Center Honors, the Jimmy Fallon Show, and America's Got Talent. She's also sung at the inaugurations of Presidents Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. An accomplished songwriter, Tabitha's received the Songwriter Hall of Fame Abe Olman Award, and she co-wrote a song with legendary Carole King called If We Get Through This, which she later sang the lead vocal on in the movie Sum of All Fears, starring Ben Affleck and Morgan Freeman. In our conversation, you'll hear about her trajectory from gospel singer to 20 feet from stardom. Plus, we look at what life is like behind the curtain with some practical advice for singers on practicing and rehearsing for TV and touring. Tabitha is a delightful human being. Talking with her, I could see why she's been one of the go-to backup singers for all the heavy hitters with whom she's performed. She's got a strong work ethic and a voice that can sing anything, but she also knows how to take her bright light and shine it on others, supporting them both musically and energetically. I think you're going to love her and our conversation. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today, Tabitha.
This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm so excited.
I'm excited to have you. I have so many questions for you about the practical aspects of your work, the nitty-gritty of practicing, rehearsing, how you prepare for tours, and so many more things. But first, I'd like to dive into your origin story with a question I ask every singer I interview here on the podcast, which is, what's your earliest memory of singing?
My earliest memory would have to be singing in church. My dad is a pastor. My dad pastored smaller churches. So that's my earliest memory, is singing in this little church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm trying to remember the song I sang. It was probably like Jesus Loves Me or something like that. But that would have to be my earliest memory. And I remember just loving it, even at that young of an age. I loved getting up there and, of course, getting all the attention.
Right.
That's my first memory.
How old were you?
I think I was 4, maybe 3.
Oh, that's young. So you were surrounded by music from an early age.
My mom is a musician and singer, and my dad played instruments. He played upright bass and regular bass. And, my grandfather was also a musician and songwriter and an evangelist. And I come from a long line of preachers and musicians and songwriters.
That was a big part of your life.
Yeah.
Did you have siblings?
Yes. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. I have a brother who's 2 years younger, and then a little sister who's about 7 years younger. They all sing and play music as well. They didn't go into it professionally.
Yeah, you grew up singing together then.
We did. Me and my mom and a brother used to have a trio. And we would sing in church and go to actually sing in different churches and do 3-part harmonies and that kind of thing. And that's, my mom just had that natural ear. She could pick out any song on the piano, and she was always wonderful with harmonies. She was more into gospel music, Southern gospel, that kind of thing. That's really what I grew up with, was Southern gospel. So lots of harmonies, 3rd and the 5th and that kind of thing, below and above. And so, yeah, I just grew up with a lot of harmonies, a lot of emotion in music. And when you grow up Pentecostal is how I grew up. And so it was a lot of emotion involved in singing and worshiping and that kind of thing. And I think for me, seeing that at such a young age and being involved in that at such a young age really helped me know how to connect to my own emotions, to my own artistry in a sense, because the way I see it is that, for me especially, is connecting to my higher power. That connects me to other people, especially when I'm singing.
Daddy is a preacher, my mama is a singer. They grew up loving Jesus, gave it all at the foot of the cross. Man of his word, and my daddy prays night and day. He prays for the word, and he prays for the words that he's gonna say. Preacher, preacher, my daddy's a preacher, preacher.
So you knew you wanted to make singing your life's work by the time you were 5.
Yes, I did. I just loved music. I mean, I just devoured it. When I was a kid, I listened to records over and over and over and over, just to hear all the nuances and what all the instruments were doing, what the vocalists were doing, and listening to the lyrics of the song and who played on all the songs. But of course, there were certain artists that I was enamored with, and I wanted to sound like them, and I think that's what we all try to do coming up. We all try to sound like this person or that person, but I think that it kind of informs our own sound as we figure out who we are as an artist. So yeah, so I just loved music. I couldn't get enough of it. And I think that that's what you have to do if you want to, if you really want to pursue music, you have to just devour every kind of thing that you can get your hands on, because that informs your musicality and who you're going to become.
So who did you listen to?
I listened to, of course, when I was a little kid, we were only allowed to listen to gospel music.
Uh-huh.
So
And look what happened later.
that's exactly right. So I listened to Andre Crouch and the Disciples. I listened to the Rambo family, Reba Rambo, Dottie Rambo. Dottie Rambo is one of the most iconic songwriters in gospel music, even until now. I mean, she's not with us anymore, but her music and her writing will go on and on and on.
Oh,
She's
wow.
like, I would compare her to like Dolly Parton, because Dolly, the way she writes is just like, it's very visual, and she really pulls at the heartstrings. And that was the same with Dottie Rambo. So anyhow, I grew up listening to her sing and her writing and her harmonies, and just made beautiful records. And Amy Grant, and just numerous contemporary Christian artists that have at this point in my career have met a lot of those people and have worked with them. So you just never know when you're a kid and you're listening to all this music and you're dreaming of what it's going to be like to sing in front of a lot of people. You can never really imagine all the opportunities, but at this point in my life, I've gotten to meet a lot of my heroes and have them as friends and get to know them. So anyhow, it's been quite an amazing journey in that way. But those artists that I just spoke about, they tremendously influenced my style and just really everything. Those were my earliest people that I gravitated towards, since I was only, allowed to listen to gospel music. So
I think that the music that we listen to when we're growing up is so influential, because we're learning language at that time, right? So music is just another language.
Yes.
And the more you're exposed to, the bigger your vocabulary. So when you do start putting your own music together, you have more to draw from if you've been immersed in lots of different kinds of music. Sounds like you had a wonderful immersion in gospel music when you were growing up. So then you moved to Nashville when you were about 15. How did that come about?
Well, actually, I didn't move there at 15. I ended up doing my first project in Nashville when I was 15. So I came here with my folks and I did my first project, and that was with a record label called Skyline Records. And it was a small boutique label in Nashville, more gospel oriented, Southern gospel. And I think JD and the Stamps might have been on that label. Some of the like well-known Southern gospel groups were on that label. And I just went in to do a project, and the label really liked what I did. And he was like, well, let's sign you and let's put this record out on our label. And so I was in like Targets and Walmarts. But the funny thing is, and I would go out and I would do concerts and sing in a lot of different churches and sell my albums that way at the time. But there wasn't really any real promotion behind any of that stuff that I did at that point. I did all the promotion. I did all the legwork, basically. But they did put it out in the stores, and it probably didn't sell that many, but but it was distributed.
So how did this record deal come about? I mean, I'm confused about how you got the project in the first place.
Well, so, my dad's a pastor, and he would have different people come to our church and hold revivals and that kind of thing. And we had this couple that would come and hold revivals at our church. They were the Darbys. That was their name, the Darbys. And they did a lot of work here in Nashville. And they specifically were on that label. Okay. And so that's kind of how it all came about. They were like, oh, we want to help you. We think that we should take you to Nashville and you should do this project there. And then one thing led to the next,
Wow. So they heard you, and then they were like, hey, we hear something that's remarkable here. Let's get her to Nashville. And that's how you got with Skyline.
Yes, that is exactly. You got to have somebody that's in your corner. You have to have that person, that cheerleader who believes in what you're doing, I think, at any level. So, and they were at that point in my life, they were there in that position to help me, to mentor me. And I find that, there's always been those people in my life, I mean, whatever level that I was at, who helped me. And I'm very grateful for all those people. And I still have people in my life.
Well, I heard you say, and I really believe this is to be true as well, that relationships are everything. And not just the kind of phony relationships where it's like, what can this person do to help me? It's like real relationships with people who care about you and see something in you that they want to help you bring out some more, So let's talk about the record producer, Keith Thomas, because it sounds like, from what I've heard and read about you, he was hugely influential in terms of relationships. And for those who don't know who Keith Thomas is, oh my goodness. He's a producer that's been nominated for, I think, a Grammy or Dove Award 19 times. And he's won almost half of those nominations for recordings of heavy hitters like BB and Cece Winans, Gladys Knight, Heather Headley. How did you meet him, and what kind of relationship came out of that meeting?
So initially, Keith had seen me in a few things. He saw me on a video with this artist named Vince Ebo, and then he saw me on a television commercial here in Nashville where I was singing the spot. It was a thing for the local Channel 4 station that I did, and it was like a jingle for them. And I sang the spot, and I was on camera. And he saw those two things, and he was just like, I've got to find this girl,
Wow.
Yeah. And so I get a call one day, and I'm at home, and it's Keith Thomas. He said, "Hey, Tabitha, this is Keith Thomas." And of course, I knew who he was and such a huge fan. And when I heard his voice and him say that it was him, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then he says, I saw you on this commercial, and then I saw you in this video. And he said, I love your voice, and you have a great look.
Wow.
And he said, I would love to have a meeting with you and talk to you about your career and the next steps and what's happening. I want to know all about what you're doing. Yeah. So I think we might have even gotten together the next day and had a meeting. And of course, I was super excited about it because, like I said, big fan. And I went to the meeting, and from that point on, I just started singing on a lot of the stuff that he was producing. Like I sang on Amy Grant's thing. She did this tribute to Carole King, and I got to sing all the background vocals to It's Too Late, Baby.
Wow.
So that was my first real shot getting to sing with Keith. And that was just tremendous. And then I sang on Carla Bonoff project and a lot of other projects as well that he produced. And then I guess, Amy heard my voice on It's Too Late, and Keith was like, well, Amy's got this tour coming up, and it'd be really great to get you on that. And before I knew it, Amy Grant was calling me, and she was like, hey, I heard you on my project, and Keith just loves what you do. And she said, I'd like to have you on the tour. And so I was, of course, freaked out, and I said, I would love that. So that happened. And from that point, I would say, through Keith Thomas and Amy Grant and all these different people, my star started rising here in Nashville. And I was singing on a lot of different record projects in town, from country to gospel to pop. And I think I was pretty in demand at that point here in Nashville. Things just really started happening, and I was super busy and singing on a lot of, and then I've done quite a few tours with Amy since that tour. And sang on many projects with Keith. And I can say that Keith is a dear friend, and I just love that guy. I just think he is the classiest human being and just such a great producer and musician. His ears are just phenomenal.
So what makes a great producer? First of all, a lot of people don't know what a producer does in the recording studio. So what does he do, and why is he one of the best?
In order to be a really great producer, you have to have a really great musical vocabulary, like you said earlier. And you have to also know how to communicate to your musicians, to your singers. Plus, you have to have a really cool musical aesthetic. You have to have really great ears, because it's not just about going in and laying down a vocal, going in and putting down on these instruments and whatever. It's about knowing how to do it and how to make it all come together and sound great, sound cohesive. You know, I think that if you're producing an artist, you have to really like know who the artist is and know how to bring out the best in that artist. Vocally, and then and especially like if you're in the trenches writing the songs with them, and you have to really know how to get to that part of who that person is to draw out certain things.
And it's probably different for every artist, right?
Exactly, because as we know, artists can be temperamental, we can be moody, and some are outgoing and some are not. Some are just very inward kind of people. And so you just kind of have to know how to navigate, a guy, a girl, a young kid, it's just all over the map. You got to know how to navigate that part of it. But I think a great producer knows how to do that. And even if maybe they might have areas that they're not as good at, but maybe they have people around them who are, it's just like knowing how to corral the whole thing. And then you get to the finished product. And then when you've mixed the project, then you have to go and you have to get it mastered. And then you have to, there's so many steps to getting to the end product.
It's like magic when it all comes together. And there's a lot of stuff that doesn't. I mean, I'm sure you've been there too, where you're like really excited about a song and then the recording of it just kind of falls flat. And then there's other songs where you think, meh, but then you record it and it comes alive in a way that you didn't expect,
It's so true.
How old were you when this part of the Nashville story started?
I would say mid-20s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you did that project where you didn't move to Nashville, and then you spent about 5-6 years kind of building up to this point?
Yeah, I went to college. I studied music. I went to Oklahoma City University.
Oh, okay.
And I studied music theater. I got a really great education there. And I think that kind of thing you can take with you into your grave, basically. I really believe that, because especially as a singer and as a musician. And I told you earlier that I vocal coach as well. So that was huge, being able to take that into vocal coaching.
Right. And that's very helpful. I mean, there are some artists who don't know how to read and write music, but it sure makes it easier to communicate your ideas when you do.
It does, when you kind of know how to communicate your keys and arrangements, especially if you're sitting in with bands and you're doing that kind of thing. You go, yeah, I'm going to do, whatever in the key of D. And then you know how to lead a band a little bit better because you have more knowledge of the fundamentals.
So you're in your 20s. You're working with country stars like Amy Grant, Wynonna Judd, Faith Hill. Yes. Your career was on a roll. And then you co-founded one of the highest selling contemporary Christian groups of all time, Avalon. Why go out on a limb with a new group when you're doing so well with artists who were already on top of the charts?
Yeah, I always wanted to be a solo artist and an artist, but I went into music not just with that one thing in mind. I went into music to do music wherever it led me, because music's in my bones and it's just who I am as a person. It is a part of my identity. It is me. So when I got to Nashville and I got all these different opportunities, I just went with all of them because that's who I am. I'm a singer. And it came along with Avalon. I was like, this is great. And so it just worked out really well. But then I got to the point to where I was like, well, do I want to be in a group? And I had some opportunities brewing for myself as a solo artist at that point. And so I really felt that I was not going in the right direction being in Avalon. So I basically quit. I quit the band before Avalon became this platinum selling huge act. But they were on their way. I knew they would do really well. I mean, because they had EMI behind them, and they had just all the right people behind the project, from the producer to the manager to the record label. I mean, I knew they were going to go somewhere, but I felt like I wasn't really ready for that, because I knew really going into the Christian music industry, for me, it was this way because I felt like being in that realm was almost like being in ministry. And I was like, I don't think I'm ready for that. Because at this point in my life, there were a lot of changes taking place in me. spiritually and kind of sowing my wild oats, even though I was married and getting all crazy. But I just was like, I just don't think this is the right direction for me right now. And so I quit, but I kept doing my other things. And I had opportunities after that didn't work out, where I had some offers for record deals and that kind of thing. But my life just didn't go that way as far as being a solo artist that did anything.
Mm-hmm. So did you feel any sense of regret as you went down this other path and looked back and thought, did you think, oh, wow?
There were some opportunities I had that I think back on now that I have regret about. And I wish I would have handled them in different ways, but you handle them the only way you know how at the time. People do ask me, they're like, well, you're such a great singer. I don't understand why you're not a household name. You hear that sometimes. And I go, well, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. All I know is I did my best. And at the time, I don't like to sit in regret. I just like to live in the now and move forward with my life. And yes, there were mistakes made. Yes, definitely. I was just growing up and having to learn who I was and didn't know who I was yet. But all I knew is that God gave me a gift and I was using it the best way I knew how. And, I think that's all you can do with the experience level I had, with the knowledge I had at that point in my life. I went with whatever tools I had around me. That's what I drew from.
So what I'm hearing you say is that when you're in that part of your life and you don't know yourself real well, it's easy to get pulled in directions that maybe aren't the best because of the kinds of things that you think you want. Because you don't know what you really want yet, except to sing.
Absolutely. You're so right. That's it.
And then there's all the business stuff. I think the only regrets I have in the business just have to do with being inexperienced and not knowing what the nature of the business was, expecting it to be different somehow. There's a lot of people who are in the business for reasons that don't really match up with mine, with values that aren't really matching up with mine. And I'm wondering if that maybe was what was going on there with you in your 20s.
I don't know if it was that. I think some of it was just, like you said, just not knowing yourself enough, or thinking, well, maybe this person is the person that is going to be the right way for me to go. Because at this point in time, I had a lot of opportunities, a lot of different people that I was doing different things with. And I did feel pulled. So you do something over here and then you look over there and that person gets really angry with you because you chose this other situation and they won't talk to you ever again. I've had that happen. And that's sad. That's a sucky thing that happens in careers and in situations, because we're all human and we all make mistakes, And I think it's important to have grace for people, but some people don't. Some people just really take things very personal. I don't want to be like that. It just takes up way too much energy. You just do your best and you try to love and try to be sensitive to other people. And especially now at this point in my life, I just try to just be kind and loving and try to make the best decisions that I can with all the knowledge I have in my back pocket right now. Mm-hmm. So
there's been a lot of road that you've traveled since those days, a lot, like literally and figuratively. So speaking of the road, you were in Nashville, but then you decided it was time to really hone your craft as a solo artist. And maybe some of these opportunities you're talking about were not there. They were in New York. So why leave Nashville? And what did you learn when you went to New York?
I think at the time when I did leave Nashville, I just felt like I had kind of reached my ceiling here, because I think you get known as something in the industry. Like I was known as a backup singer. I was known as I sang a lot of demos here in Nashville. I was well known here in this town. I had a boyfriend that I was seeing and he had a place in New York. And so I would go and visit him a lot. And then at some point he was like, well, you should just move here, I think, because you're getting some cool opportunities. And so I did. I took the plunge and I moved totally and completely to New York City and gave it my all. And It was, oh my gosh, such a ride. I have to say, I mean, living there, New York City, it's true what they say, how it can eat you up and spit you out, kind of.
Uh-huh.
It's just a very difficult place to live. Especially as an artist. But I had some of the most incredible musical experiences there and worked with some of the biggest musical icons in history.
Like Sting, right?
Yes.
So you kind of left a lot of your relationships behind. Did you have to establish new relationships? Did you already have some music business or musician relationships?
I did. I had a few relationships there already. And so really helped a lot. A songwriter in New York, his name is Jeff Frenzel. I don't know if you're familiar with him,
Yeah.
but he would come to Nashville quite a bit and do his demos here. And then I would end up singing on a lot of them. So he and I became friends. And when I moved up to New York, he was like, hey, Tap, I want to help you any way I can. So I put together, my demo reel and all the different things I'd done here. And he literally gave me about 20 names to send them to. And so I
Wow.
did. I put together the reel. I sent them to all those people. And then I just started getting a lot of work. In fact, the singers in New York City, they were a little angry because, and this is what I heard through the grapevine, that they were angry because I was getting all the work.
Oh, no.
Starting to get like all the work. And at one point when I lived there, I had 5 national jingles running at one time.
Oh my goodness.
So it was like, yeah. So I was really blessed with a lot of work, with jingles, with shows, with just everything, demos. Yeah, just things were really taking off for me there. But it was still really intense and really hard to live there. Because, this is little Oklahoma girl / Nashville moving to New York City and having to navigate, how to get around the subway system, learn all that, and just really grow up.
Yeah.
Really, it forces you to know thyself. It's one of those kind of places. And I did. I mean, I had to really work on myself there.
So how long were you there?
I was there 16 years.
Oh my goodness.
A long time.
That is a long time. Yeah.
But I wouldn't trade that for anything because I think it really made me, like I said, figure out who I was. And I moved, back here to Nashville about 6 years ago, and that has been wonderful. And that wasn't easy either because every place I've gone to, it is like you're starting over again, meeting, making new friends and then becoming part of a new musical community and getting to know all those people and all those people getting to know you and know who you actually are as a human being. And I think New York is cool in that way is because they're so accepting. I mean, you would think maybe otherwise because it is that big kind of like hard city kind of vibe, but
well, and those singers were kind of pissed off that you were getting all the work.
yeah, they were not happy. Like, how can she come here and get all this?
Yeah, but on the other hand, you're saying that the musicians generally are accepting. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. They were all just so amazing to me. Some of the people that I started working with there, like Will Lee, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but the bass player from the Letterman show. Will and his wife Sandrine were some of my best friends, and they still are. I just think so highly of them as people. And
So you made new family there.
they just accepted me with open arms. They got me through some really harsh moments there, personal moments, because of friends and my family, and it just really got me through those moments.
Can you give me an example without it being, if it's not too personal?
I was in a relationship with someone that was very toxic. I can't really go into much detail other than that. It was very toxic and it led me down some dark roads. And I had to get professional help during that time, some really good therapists to get me through that moment. And I did get through it with the help of that great therapist and some antidepressants.
And good friends.
Yeah, but mostly, like I said, good friends really got me through those moments. And they were, I would say, the most difficult moments in my life, literally. To go through difficult moments in a city like New York City, oh my gosh, it's not easy.
Yeah.
I always say it's like a bed of nails. Yeah, it's a bed of nails. It's like when you look down on that city, that's what it looks like. I saw a photograph and it literally looked like nails. It is the concrete jungle for sure, but filled with so much beautiful people in life. You have people from all walks of life there. And that's the one great thing about New York City is like, man, you just never knew who you might meet around the corner.
So many opportunities. And maybe that's partly what makes people so accepting and open, is that almost everyone's an immigrant there, right?
Basically.
Especially if you're in the performing arts. So if you don't mind, I want to shift the conversation to talk to you about working as a backup vocalist and songwriter, like the practical kind of aspects of it. So what does your vocal practice look like? What do you practice and how long do you sing every day?
Well, since I teach voice, I'm sometimes working from 10 in the morning until 6 at night. Now, that's not every day. Usually, because of vocal coaching, I'm warming people up like hours on end. So I'm having to sing a lot.
What kind of warm-ups do you teach?
I teach breathing exercises, pitch exercises with numbers. I teach the lip bubbles and the lip trills and different scales with different consonants and vowels. And when I teach a voice lessons, usually at least 20 minutes of vocal warm-ups, because I think those are super important to get the voice pliable.
Yeah, they are.
And everybody's at a different level. So you just have to kind of figure out, well, who needs this, who needs that, and work on those things.
Right. There's a lot of parts. There's a lot of different parts to the puzzle.
There really are.
From the physical to the mental to the emotional too.
You feel like a therapist sometimes.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah.
Speaking of physically, mentally, emotionally, how do you prepare for a tour?
Usually, you get a buttload of music. You sit down and just carve woodshed. I start learning the material, and I just go down the list of songs that I know I'm going to be singing backgrounds to. And then most of the time they'll say, well, you're going to sing soprano or you're going to sing this or that. You'll take the alto's track throughout the whole show. Okay. Sometimes that could change because maybe this other person would be better on the alto on this song because their textures, vocal texture is better for that. Sometimes how I learn the music depends on who all is singing, basically, in the backup group. But mostly I learn all the parts because it's just important to know all the parts, I think, because you might, like I said earlier, you might have to shift down to the alto, or maybe you have to shift up to the soprano in this, or maybe the tenor line on this other song. So
that's brilliant, Tabitha. And then you can hear their parts better when they're going by, when you're singing with them, right?
Yes. In a lot of the situations that I've been a part of, I've usually been like the leader of the background section. So you have to know kind of how to divvy things up.
That was the other thing I was going to ask you. Who's the leader?
Yeah. And when somebody else is the leader, then you just be respectful of their position and you just do what they tell you to do. I mean, that's just it. What I always say is, hey, whatever part you want me to sing is fine, whatever you think. That's kind of how I like to operate, because I think I can depend on Tabitha to come in and know her part. But if I need to shift her, she's fine with it. So I think that that's important, to be malleable so that you're not just stuck on this one thing. I have to do it this way and that's it. Because most of the time things change.
Right. They need you to be flexible. Flexibility is a really important attribute to have, I think, as a backup vocalist, because like you said, you don't know till you get with those other singers what the blend is going to be like. And if the blend is better with you singing the top note versus the middle note, then that's what needs to happen. And if you've already learned the part, then you're ready to go.
Exactly.
And you don't usually have very much time with people in person, because everybody lives in different cities sometimes. And I mean, there's always, very little time for rehearsing. So let's talk about rehearsals, because you've been to a lot of them.
Sure have.
I bet you've seen such a wide range of rehearsal styles, from totally off the cuff to those that are organized and down to the minute in terms of how they run.
I have.
What does a well-run rehearsal look like, and what makes a rehearsal work, from the nuts and bolts of things, like you were just talking about in terms of notes and blend, to the attitude and energy you bring?
I think a well-rounded rehearsal is a result of preparation. But in order to prepare, you have to get your music before the rehearsal at a good amount of time before the rehearsal so you can really sit down and learn it in woodshed.
How long a time do you like to have?
If it's a big gig or big gigs, if it's a big
Mhm.
tour, yeah, I want to get that music a month ahead of time. Sometimes I don't get that luxury, but it's just so I can really learn everything. And then you get to the rehearsal, and if they say, hey, we're going to change this arrangement, you'd be like, okay, all right. But I know the song well enough. That's
Right.
cool. So yeah, so just getting the material in a good amount of time beforehand, and then just having really good communication with either the manager or the tour manager or whatever. You know, they send out emails and they give you all of the rehearsal, when it's going to be, what time everything's going to start. And then once you get in there, the musical director is really good and they know what they're doing and they are in charge of the rehearsal. And there's not a lot of chiefs. There's one chief and he's dictating or he's telling us what to do. And then we all follow suit.
So that's the music director's job, is to
Yes.
know all the parts and get people to do everything that needs to happen for the show to go on. The
Yes.
artists that you work with, do any of them do the music director job as well as, you know?
Not really. I mean, they hire someone.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They hire someone, but with big artists, I like say like a Bruce Springsteen or Sting, you know, or James Taylor. They are such strong artists. Yeah, they've got the music director, but they also speak up and they say, hey, let's try this or try that, or they know the material so well that they can change things at the rehearsal. And so that's fine because they know exactly what it is they want. So, but yes, all those kind of artists definitely have musical directors. And I think that even if you're starting out, right, and you're an artist and you're going out and you're doing shows, you designate someone in the band to lead the band. They're in charge of the band, kind of. You're in charge of the whole thing. You're the executive producer, but you got to have somebody helping you. So you designate whoever you feel the most comfortable with, whoever you feel can get the job done, someone who's really invested in your artistry and in the material, and someone you can trust to help you with that. It's probably going to be one of your bandmates.
And they better be able to communicate well too, I think.
Yes, and have good people skills.
And also kind of be a librarian. I mean, there's so much organizing of music to do. Do they usually do that part too, or does somebody else take care of the charts?
It depends on the person, whoever the band leader is. Like, say, I'll give you a scenario. So over the years, I've done the Kennedy Center Honors. I've done big shows like that, the Rainforest Benefit. And so those are big shows, a lot of moving parts. You've got your band and you have all your singers. So with the singers, though, normally we don't have charts. We just have to learn the music. We call them head charts, where you just listen to the harmonies and you underline lyrics and you know, well, here's a 3-part harmony, so I'm going to make my note that that's the case there. But with the band, they have to have charts. Those kind of gigs require charts because you have a lot of material and you don't have a lot of time to learn the material.
Right. They're not going to memorize stuff usually.
Yes, exactly. So the scenario I'm talking about is Kennedy Center Honors. So Rob Matha was our director. He would probably make charts for a lot of the band members. But in that situation, they do have somebody that they do call for charts. But sometimes Rob would do it. Sometimes the chart guy would do it. It just depends. If you have an orchestra, then you have to have somebody that can write those orchestrations out. So it just depends really on the type of artist that you're working with and then how big the band is. And it's just, there's just a lot of things to think about. But most of the time, the musical director will make the charts. Unless the artist, they decide, well, I'm going to get so-and-so I'm going to pay this so-and-so person to come over and arranger to write out these charts.
So the bigger the gig and the more work there is to do, the more it gets chunked out and given to different people.
Yes.
So that it can all get done,
Yes.
especially for these TV shows that are so huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then how many rehearsals do you end up having for some of these bigger shows, like the Kennedy Center Honors? Is there just like 1 or 2 rehearsals and then you're there and you're doing it?
Basically, yeah. Like Kennedy Center Honors, the same day that we fly in, we start rehearsing. basically that afternoon we start rehearsing, and that's usually just the band and the singer. The band will rehearse by themselves, and then the singers will go to a room and we'll rehearse all the stuff, and then we'll come together later that day and we'll rehearse, all of us will rehearse together. Then the next day the artists all come in and they sing with us that Saturday, because usually it's a Friday we fly in, we rehearse by ourselves, Saturday with the artist, and then Sunday that is camera blocking. That's all that stuff. And the artists come in and rehearse with us on camera to get all the lighting and all that stuff on stage. And then that night, and they call those dress rehearsals. And then that night we do the show.
There's no time at all. Everything has to just be like clockwork by the time you get to that Sunday, quote unquote, dress rehearsal.
So you basically have to be prepared, like so big time when you get there. You got to really know your parts, like no guesswork. Now, when you get there, you know, you could be, like I said, I could be singing soprano or I could be singing tenor. I don't know. That's why I have to learn all the parts and flush all the parts out well enough so that I can do whatever part they tell me to do.
When you do these kinds of things, how many songs do you end up singing?
Usually for the Kennedy Center honors, not that there were tons that we had to sing, but sometimes there could be 8 songs or sometimes 10. Sometimes we could be singing in 2 different segments, depending on who they were honoring that year.
That's a lot of parts, Tabitha.
It is. It's a lot of parts, but boy, it was fun. It was so much fun.
Oh, I bet. So what do you listen for to create a great blend with other singers, especially when, you know, you maybe haven't worked with them before?
Well, pitch is super important. Tone is one of the most important things. Tone, pitch, dynamics, phrasing. It's like everything. It's all the musical layers. It's knowing where to sing breathy, when to sing with crescendo here, decrescendo there. Oh, we're gonna sing this out. You know, we're gonna project all this really, and we're gonna sing with a lot of vibrato. Or no, we're all gonna sing with straight tone in the room. I don't like to rehearse on microphones when I first get with the backup singers. When we all get together, it's like, no, let's get our vibe in the room and let's blend in the room first. And then by the time you get on stage with microphones, you've established that blend. Okay. So that's like really important, I think, is to establish that blend. And it's like the sound is alive. It's like almost like another entity, that sound. And you're creating this atmosphere. So it's just, we have to look at each other. We have to communicate with our eyes, with our bodies. It's just, that's how I see it.
Because there's so much that you have to do in such a short amount of time. All your senses have to be online to be able to communicate what's going to happen next. And our bodies tell other people what's going to happen next. And if you're the leader, I would imagine you're probably really good at showing with your body what dynamic level is going to happen, or those kinds of things. Is that right? Am I just
absolutely? It's I definitely try to do that.
So then you're at the show and you're at this technical rehearsal and you can't hear right in your in-ear monitor. What do you do then?
I look at the monitor guy and I go, I can't hear, or I'll walk over to the monitor guy and I'll be very kind about it, because you have to be. And I'll say, hey, can you turn this up or that up? I can't hear this or I can't hear that. And normally what happens, this is if you're in a rehearsal that's running well, is that they go around the room and they check your mix. They will ask you, hey, Tabitha, hey, how's your mix? What do you need? And I use in-ear monitors. Most of these gigs, we all have our own mixes, which is great. You're not using floor monitors, because sometimes those can blow your ears out. So with in-ears, you can get whatever you want in them, and you can have it as loud or soft or whatever. So for me, though, I like to hear a mixture of everything in my ears with myself up in the mix. And I usually like to hear a good amount of keyboard for pitch. And then I like to hear groove. I like to hear that bass. And then I also like to hear with the drum kit, I like to hear a good bass drum. I like to hear just maybe a little snare, not much at all. Everything else is a little softer, but yet still present in my mix. So it's like a record almost. I like a full sound in my ears. When you have those in-ears, you literally don't hear anything on stage. So you have to get those in-ears right. It's important that I hear myself above everything.
And then the other singers, are they in the mix?
Yeah, so my voice up and then theirs a little below mine so that I can hear the blend.
Okay.
If you're in a group, you have to hear each other. That's all there is to it.
Oh, no kidding. Horrible, horrible feeling not to be able to hear the other parts, because then you're just like,
oh yeah, you're just out. Exactly. You're just like flailing in the wind there. It's not a good feeling. So yeah. So a well-run rehearsal will make sure that everyone can hear properly. Then you're off to the races.
And I would say too that a well-run rehearsal means that everyone who's on that stage with you is quiet while you're doing this process.
That's right.
Because I've been in so many frustrating situations where it's like people are talking or they're plinking on their instruments or the drummer's hitting the snare drum and you're like, hey, I'm just trying to get my monitor right here.
You see, I'm getting a sound check here.
Yeah.
But a lot of times that's another responsibility of the musical director too. He has to set the tone for whatever is happening in the room. And usually the music director is a strong personality and he will say, hey, dude, hey, we're trying to get something going on here, and they'll stop whatever they're doing. That's happened many times.
Right.
So, and then they stop and then everybody looks at them and they're a little embarrassed and they should be. No,
especially if they're a guitar player. Oh, did I say that?
It's like, grow up, man. Aren't you a professional?
Yeah. We're working over here.
Yeah. Exactly.
So when you're putting together a backing band for your own shows, what's your criteria? What are the qualities that you look for in the musicians you hire?
I like people that are probably like me. I don't know, but like we are similar, and we have a kinship and we have a friendship. And then on top of that, they have to be really good at what they do.
Right.
Yeah. I have to have that. I have to have a bond with them.
Because you never know. You never know what's going to happen. And when you're on stage, to know that they have your back and you have their back and everyone trusts each other and no one's ego is going to get in the way or all those things, it helps you relax into the music. And then the music soars.
It's the best when you're all firing on the same page. When you're on stage, there's nothing better.
So let's talk about songwriting and collaboration. How did you learn how to write songs and what's your process?
I started writing when I was a teenager, 15 maybe. I wrote a song for my first record that I did with Skyline. How I write is I definitely write from my own experiences, lyrically especially. Musically, for me, melodies will just come. Sometimes the melody or sometimes the lyric will come first. Sometimes the whole thing will kind of spill out. It just depends. Or sometimes the title will come first. And like I said, and usually it's something I'm going through or have gone through and I just need to get it out. And then I also love to collaborate with people and co-write. In those situations, all those are so different. And I know that like if I don't gel with a person, probably not going to gel with them in a co-write.
Yeah.
So, and you figure that out pretty quick.
Well, what are the different kinds of situations that you find yourself in with co-writes? I mean, I know you've had a lot of different experiences.
Yeah, there are people I write with that I've never met in my life, and you get into a room and you either gel or you don't.
Who gets you into the room? Because people are always like, well, I want to write songs, but I don't know how to find people to write songs with.
Usually songwriting friends that I've worked with in the past. Maybe it's someone that I've done a demo for or some artist I've worked with or whatever. They'll go, hey, we should write sometime. And you go, okay. And then you have an appointment and you write with them. And then maybe they'll invite somebody else to the write that you've never met before. And they go, oh, you'll love this person. Yeah, I write with them all the time. And then you get in a room with them and then either you gel or you don't. And sometimes you still get a song out of it. It just depends. I just meet people from all parts of the music industry in such different ways. I might meet them at a gig and they'll go, I know who you are and whatever, and let's get together and write something. You know, all the situations are different.
As different as people are. And then you've got people who probably want to lead the song writing.
You have all that.
Because you get somebody who comes in with strong ideas and just needs a little help finishing the song maybe. And then there's probably other situations that you're in where it just starts from nothing.
And I do kind of like those kind of situations where it just starts from nothing. Just like what are you feeling today? Or you sit down at the piano, or somebody sits down with their guitar and they start playing something and you start singing a melody over it. And then the whole song just kind of starts flying out. That's really fun. I love it when that happens. I love it when a song just comes in 15 minutes. That's always awesome. And sometimes they do really fast. And sometimes it's like pulling teeth. You're just like, it's aggravating, it's frustrating. And sometimes I'm not in the mood to do it. Sometimes just like, I'm in it right. I'm just like, I'm just not here. And sometimes it takes a few times to get a song completed because it could be me or somebody else just isn't in the headspace for it. And you just give each other grace for that and go, hey, okay, well, let's reschedule and get together again and just try to finish it. I just think it comes when it's supposed to come. That's how I see it. I try not to force it so much.
One of the people that's one of my favorite songwriters of all time is Carole King, of course.
Yes.
I think I was in middle school when her album Tapestry came out. What I didn't know then was how many hit songs she'd written for other people before that in the Brill Building. She's written or co-written like 118 pop hits on the Billboard Hot 100, and you got a chance to write with her. That just blows my mind.
Was one of the lucky few, I mean, like I said, when you're a kid and you're coming up in your musical world, I never would have imagined that in my wildest dreams that I would have gotten an opportunity to write and meet and hang out with Carole King. Never would I have imagined that. I was so excited, I was invited to this castle in the south of France, and it was Miles Copeland's writing retreat. This was around all that time when I was really just excelling, just doing great stuff here in Nashville. And that was one of the opportunities I got, was to do this writing retreat. And that happened that the last day of the retreat, they picked me and Carole and this guy named John Parrish to write together. I was shocked when they picked me to write with her. I was, but I just feel so blessed and fortunate that I got the opportunity to go to this retreat. And then the last day got to write with her. It was an amazing experience. She came in and she had the idea, and the song title is If We Get Through This. And so she came in with that idea. And me and John, we of course loved it. And she sang a little bit of it, played it. We were like, yes, let's work on that. My part of the song was probably more of the bridge, because we all had our sections of the song that were us. That's the great thing about Carole, is she allowed us to be us. She wasn't trying to take control or it has to be my way or the highway. Wow. She was a phenomenal mentor. Mm-hmm. And we just all loved her. She just was one of us, and she just had great stories, and she was so nurturing and kind and generous, so generous and so humble. And then we wrote the song and we demoed it in the same day. That was really fun to get to work with her in the studio and have her produce the vocal, and we did the tracking and everything in that day. And then a few years later, I got a call and they wanted to put that song in a film with me singing it. So the film that it was in was Sum of All Fears with Morgan Freeman and Ben Affleck. And the song was in the movie and on the soundtrack, and me singing it. And her son-in-law at the time, Robbie Condor, produced it. And we had like the top musicians playing on it in New York City, and the top singers in New York City, like Lisa Fisher was on the session. And
oh, amazing.
It was just wonderful. Yeah, it was a wonderful experience.
Wow, what a great story. You've been on stages with some of the biggest stars in the business, performed at presidential inaugurations, the Kennedy Center honors. You've sung for artists like Dolly Parton and Stevie Wonder. Do you still get starstruck? Do you still get nervous when you meet some of these people?
Absolutely. I still get a little like nervous around Sting because I'm such a big fan. What girl doesn't have a crush on Sting? I mean, he's such a gentleman. And I love his wife, Trudy, too. She's class act. They both are. They're just amazing, generous people. So I still get starstruck, to answer your question. Absolutely. But when I do, I try not to show it so much. I'm probably a little more quiet and reserved when I get starstruck. I just sit back and listen and observe more than I talk. I still have respect and all that. And I'm not a big, like, I don't have to be the center of attention. I don't have to talk and have them look at me. No, I like to observe. I like to be a part of what's going on, but allow other people to shine too in those situations. And I think that's really important as a person that's singing backup or you're on a big stage like that. You at some point will get an opportunity to shine, but you also allow other people to have their moment and applaud them when they get that moment. And I think that's so important and to not be a person that is very consumed with yourself in those situations. I think you have to really have some humanity.
Yeah, I think that's why these people hire you, my dear.
Thank you.
Because you recognize that that's a part of it. And you're there to support and to love the music and to show that love to the audience. And that's one of the reasons that I actually love to sing backup. I like to be in the spotlight sometimes, but I also like to be in that support role. It's fun to be able to shine that light on somebody else and watch them soar.
Yeah.
And I love the blend of a good backup lineup. I think it's almost more fun than singing solo in some ways.
So a couple of years ago, we did the Rainforest benefit. And I think it was probably going to be one of the last ones that's going to be done. And so it's Sting and Trudy. They do this thing for the Rainforest every 2 years. And normally it's at Carnegie Hall. But this last time they had it at the Beacon. And the lineup of artists they had, it was unreal, right? Because it's like the last hurrah. They had Annie Lennox and Dave on the show. And they haven't performed together. So your rhythm mix broke up. But they're reuniting to do the Rainforest benefit. And so we got to sing with them the whole time. And of course, Annie Lennox, oh my goodness, talk about a humble, sweet, lovely human being. I was so impressed by her. And her voice is unbelievable. I mean, Girlfriends still sounds strong or stronger than ever. But she got up there and I'm telling you, you could just feel the electricity. When she's up there singing and we're singing with her and the band is kicking butt. I mean, there's nothing better than seeing an artist or hearing your iconic person that you look up to so much, and you get to back them up and you get to support them and help them shine in a moment that is like that. I have to say that was such an amazing feeling.
Wow.
To be up there and getting to do that. That was just incredible.
Unbelievable. When you do get nervous on stage, we're not talking starstruck anymore, but do you get nervous on stage? And if you do, what kind of self-talk do you do to get out of it?
If I'm not prepared, that's when I get stage fright. If I don't know the material that well, that's scary for me. But even in those situations, it's usually not because of something I've done, because I type of person I prepare. Usually it's something that's just thrown at me before I have to go on stage, or somebody's come in and they change the arrangement or that kind of thing. And then I'm now flying by the seat of my pants.
Right.
That can be a little scary, but I just go, well, you've done the work. You learned it. It's just different. So just enjoy the ride while you're up there. Just do your best. That's what I tell myself. Just do your best. You already know the material, and nerves are good. And you just have to sit in those nerves a little bit, and then you're out of it. You're singing with all your might, all your heart. The nerves go away, and you're just up there, and you're just talking to the audience with your voice.
I heard you say that you're a perfectionist.
Yes.
And now I understand why, because you want to be over prepared.
Yes.
So then you can say to yourself, I did everything I could to get to this moment, and this is what's happening.
Sometimes technical issues will happen and the sound is whack or whatever, and you just got to roll with it. You can't let it show on your face.
Right.
And that's what I would tell people, whether you're singing backup or singing lead. You can't make faces, because people see your face if they're doing that, and then they're distracted by that. If you don't make the face, most of the time they're not going to know you screwed up.
Absolutely. Whenever I get to be an audience member and I'm seeing somebody sing that does make a mistake, I love it when they laugh about it. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's a really obvious one and they're just like, oh, look at that.
Exactly.
There's been once or twice where I had to stop the song and start over again. And if I'm freaked out about it, I transmit that to the audience, right? And then they're freaked out for me and they feel bad for me.
But if you just laugh it off, they're going to laugh with you.
Absolutely. So let's talk about being on the road. There's parts of it that are fun, but a lot of it's really hard. Have you ever felt lonely?
I love being on tour. I love it. I love traveling. I love being on the bus. I love sleeping on the bus. I love being on the bus after the show and we're all talking about the show. And I love all that. I love that community on the bus. I think for me, the lonely part comes when I go home and then I have to readjust to being home, especially because I'm a single lady. So if you've had this community and you've been on the bus, you're like family. It takes a minute to get used to being on tour, but once you get used to it, then it's like, it's on and I'm loving it. But then coming home, man, that's when I have to like go, okay, just call some friends, go do something, let people know you're back, because you have to readjust to that. So for me, that's the kind of the lonely time is coming home.
Do you have any regrets about the life that you've chosen?
I love what I do so much. I would say that, I don't have children. I chose to not have kids. I do have hopes of marrying again and finding somebody really special. But I have been so career driven that my career, in a sense, has been my child.
For real.
So if anything, I would say that would be my one regret, is not having kids.
Yeah, children in the road. I don't know how people do it. I really don't. I mean, just being gone all that time, and unless you are able to take your children with you, and even then, I don't know. That's a hard choice. I can understand why you chose not to try to do both.
Yeah. To me, it would be selfish to have a child knowing that I would be gone all the time. And I knew that that's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to tour. I wanted to be an artist and be about my musical craft. And so that's what I did.
And what would you say to a younger version of you if you could go back and talk to her?
I would say, really know thyself. I would say you don't need a relationship. You don't need a man in your life. I always felt like I needed a man in my life. But I would say all you need is you, girl.
Oh, nice.
That's all you need. And all you need is yourself and God. Make him first and do your best at every opportunity that comes along, and take seriously the ones that are in front of you, the people that want to invest in you and in your career. Really look at those things.
So do you think it's harder to make it in the music business now than it was when you first started?
Yes, absolutely.
How so?
There's so many different things going on now in the music industry. One way that might not be as difficult is because of the internet. You can be seen and heard by millions and millions of people all over the world, all over the globe. With social media, you have more opportunity in that way. But I see that as being a little more fleeting, except for maybe like Justin Bieber. He was able to do it, but it's fleeting because, gosh, back in the day, you had big record labels, you had artists who were developed and who, because of their talent, they were able to stick around and become a legacy act. They had legs.
Yeah.
But now, because of the internet and with television, with everything, you can just become kind of a flash in the pan.
It's all about next, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's all about what's next. And people's attention spans are so short. It's unbelievable. So to capture their attention and keep it, it's like a full-time job.
It really is. It's a full-time job. And with these artists coming up, they have to have all these big numbers on their social media platforms, and they have to put out content at least 3 times a day. You have to have big numbers before a label will even look at you. Young artists that come to me and they say, hey, I want to get a record deal. I'm like, well, okay, you got a lot of work to do because it ain't going to be easy, girl, boy. It's not going to be easy.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to the singers who are listening to this interview who feel called to make a life in music, but they don't know where to start?
First of all, just work on your craft. Get that solid. Get a real musical foundation, because that will take you far. If you don't do that, you won't get around the corner. I'm sorry. It's just not, you might for a minute, but you have to be well-versed as an artist. And then you have to get educated. You've got to find out all the things that you need to do. Really great songs will take you places, okay? And a good work ethic and the mentality of I'm not going to give up. And you put content out there, post stuff on YouTube, on TikTok, on just all your social media things, put out music all the time. I mean, it's just make music as much as you can, write. If you're a songwriter, write every day. I mean, it's just important to do your thing every day. As a singer, you have to practice every day to get your vocal cords strong and pliable. And then you have got to put yourself out there. You might have to move to a different city to be a part of a musical community. If you want to be a country artist, then you should probably be in Nashville. Or if you want to be a pop artist, you have to be where the music is happening, or you have to have someone working for you who have the connections, and they can call people and say, hey, you got to check out this new artist I'm working with. Either you know people or you know people who know people. You can't expect somebody else to do it for you. If you want it, you got to go for it. You got to do it. You got to do the work. There's not a replacement for that. You have to put the work in, especially if you want to have longevity as an artist.
There is no point A to point B to point C. It's being at the right place and at the right time, meeting the right people and being ready.
And get out there and play and sing as much as you can. I don't care what it is. Just get out and sing. Even if it's to go to your local high school football games and sing the national anthem. I mean, it's any and all things to build your musical chops, your character as an artist, your platform. It's not just one thing. It's everything. It's social media. It's getting out in your community, being seen and heard. Because you never know who's going to be out there listening.
Good stuff, Tabitha. Really good stuff. So what are you currently working on? What's been happening for you since the pandemic hit? This has not been an easy time.
Well, it has not. No, it's been challenging for sure. And as far as like playing out live and all that, that's almost been non-existent, although it's now coming back. Through the pandemic, I did work on a dance song, and they put it out this year. It's a song called Fly, and I did it with DJ Macau. He and I wrote Fly together. We worked on that through the pandemic, and it was released and did pretty well in the charts.
Nice.
It doesn't seem right that you have wings and don't have the sky. You don't have to feel like you have lost your mind. Come along with me right now. Let us fly to a place we can set you free. Open up your arms, make them strong as they can be. 'Cause we are gonna fly. We are gonna fly together. Reach across the sky. We are gonna fly forever.
So I did that. As of now, I'm going to Greece in June with Desmond Child, and we're playing a show at the Parthenon.
Whoa, that's going to be cool.
I'm so excited. Yeah, and I know Rita Wilson's doing it, and there's other artists that I can't really say yet because I don't know who all else is going to be a part of the show, but it'll be pretty awesome because some of the artists will be artists that have cut his songs, and he's had so many hits with so many iconic artists. So they'll be there, and I'll be singing backup and maybe even featured on a song or two, who knows. But yeah, so I've got that coming up, and I'm going to be writing another song with DJ McCow. And he and this other guy named Robert Ubach. Robert is an award-winning or Grammy-winning producer. And so DJ McCow and myself are going to write with him a new dance single for this year. I also am the vocal producer for a church called Cornerstone Church here in Nashville. So I work with the worship team and sing on the worship team. And so I'm very busy with that as well. And
you're teaching.
Yes, absolutely.
So where can people find you?
You can find me on iTunes and Spotify and all the digital platforms. You can find me on there. And on my Instagram.
I'll make sure to have all the links on my website so that people can go there and connect with you and listen to more of what you've done, and also see video of you singing, because it's a treat. I've really enjoyed talking with you today, Tabitha, and I so appreciate you sharing your experiences with our audience here. I hope we get a chance to connect again someday in the future.
Me too. Maybe we'll get to sing together. Who knows?
Oh, wouldn't that be fun? I would love that.
Me too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Living a Vocal Life. For complete show notes and a transcription of my conversation with Tabitha, you can head to my website, ValerieDaySings.com. There you'll find videos of Tabitha performing and links to all her social media pages and website. And if you're a singer, there's more. A resource page with free downloads and links to help your inner singer and your music career, plus more podcast episodes, and a blog about all things related to living your own vocal life. If you enjoy these conversations and want to support the podcast, now you can. Whether you're listening on your favorite podcast app or my website, you can buy me a virtual cup of coffee. For the price of a steaming cup of Java, your contribution will help pay for the apps I use to record and edit the podcast and the 40+ hours it takes to create each episode. Thank you in advance for your support. I'd also love to hear from you, so please connect with me via my website or on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Let me know what you found helpful in this conversation and what you'd like to hear more of in episodes to come. Until next time, be well, keep singing, and thanks again for listening.